There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello Booktube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. And welcome to the University of Saskatchewan campus. I am so excited to be here. This is my second visit. I came here to see a specialist doctor at the University of Saskatchewan Hospital on Wednesday. I didn't think I'd get in to see him so quickly, but he had a cancellation and I got in very quickly and then started wandering around my old stomping grounds, my alma mater, the University of Saskatchewan. I think I'm going to do a lot of filming here as long as I'm not breaking any campus rules. I'll find out soon enough, I guess. I'm an alumni, so I don't know if that will, you know, I think most people would think I'm faculty or aging perpetual student and wouldn't report me. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, I have a friend who's I think retired prof now. Kathy, I can ask her if I'm doing anything wrong, but I cannot express. It's not only a comfortable place to be for me, I am stimulated up to my tits. Oh, I just love this place. So this is a family university for me. 2 out of my 4 grandparents graduated from here. My grandma Mooney graduated. She was one of the class of 1920. And then on my mom's side, my grandfather graduated from the theology college and became a United Church minister. I think he graduated in 1941, something like that. And then both parents are graduates. My father did a vocational agriculture degree here in the 50s, I want to say, late 50s. And my mom has a BA and a theology degree from the same theological college, United Church Theological College, St. Andrews, where her father graduated from. And wait, there's more. I was born here, not here, but I was born at the University of Saskatchewan Hospital. I'm adopted, but this is where my birth mother gave birth to me. And Kenji and I were married on the University of Saskatchewan campus grounds at the theological college in the chapel there, St. Andrews College. So this place is just vibrating with important, happy memories for me. The other thing is that I was such a geeky kid that it started with me when I was maybe 9 or 10 or 11 years old, that I would come in from the farm and visit my grandparents who wintered in the city. They had an apartment in the city, but they were farmers as well. And I got to visit them for a week, and I would go to the public library, which was about a 7-minute walk from their apartment every day. It was like from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I was such a geeky kid. I loved the library so much. And both of my grandparents, well, all of my grandparents were readers, but this was on my dad's side, and they were readers, and they just loved the fact that I was going to the library and reading and photocopying and watching 8mm reels of documentaries all day long, and then I'd come home in time for supper. And then as I got a little bit older, into my teens, I was allowed to come up here to the University of Saskatchewan Library. And by that point, I was very much into genealogy. And I did a lot of genealogical research, not only at the University Library, because they had a lot of newspapers on microfilm and I could look up my ancestors' obituaries and this and that, but also the Saskatchewan Archives is on this campus, and I spent many hours there as well when I was 14, 15, 16. So this place was already darned important to me personally before I became a student in 1984, and then I was graduated with a BA in history in 1988, and then I moved away, and then 3 years later I came back and got the equivalent of a BA honors in English literature, and then went to Toronto to do my master's. So I just love being here. Oh my God. I'm so excited telling you all this that I forgot to open my Japanese coffee. And here I am sitting beside, I think it's a new statue, but I was probably not paying attention the last time I was a student here, so I don't know how new it is, of the Ukrainian poet Lesya Ukrainka, who died in 1913. And if you happen to read all the text on that plaque, it was kind of spearheaded in the original huge donation of $1,000, which at the time would have been a huge amount of money, was by my old prof, Dr. Victor Bunyak. He was my Eastern European literature prof, and I was a terrible student, and he respected my intellectual abilities, but he was not all that impressed with my attendance record. So, and right behind me is the Walter Murray Library, the main University of Saskatchewan library. And I went there, I had a break while the prescriptions were getting filled at the pharmacy at the hospital here. I came and I got an alumni library card, and I was so excited about getting a library card that, like I said, I was just vibrating. Like, not that I'm probably gonna borrow a lot of books from here, but that this will be a place that I can come and read and watch guys and do research. Probably I'll be able to do some much deeper research with etymological sources for my, in other words, if I start to find out what's actually here at the library, and just geeking out. And the librarian who was helping me get my card processed was so friendly, and I was just la 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 la. So excited. I'll show you my new card. Oh, there's my library card. It's just a And then I noticed a woman at the next counter, because I was taking a really long time. So students were coming to check out books or whatever, and another librarian would come up and open the counter briefly to take care of anybody that was just checking books out while I was taking a long time to get my stuff done. And this was an older woman, and it wasn't so much her voice that I recognized, but for some reason I turned to look when she said, "Oh, I'm no longer connected to the University of Saskatchewan," and she was returning books, or I don't know what she was doing, something like that. And I turned to look, and it was Maria Campbell, the preeminent Métis memoirist, writer, cultural warrior, activist. She's 82 years old, and there she was. She looked 60. And I recognized her as an older person because I have watched her on Zoom with different literary events that she's been involved in. So I think at least 2 I've watched her and just kind of fell in love with her as this wonderful pioneering writer of Indigenous literature. And she has done so much to encourage other writers, Indigenous writers, especially Métis writers, and Métis historical research. And I just got a book that'll be in one of my upcoming book hauls of Métis history, and she wrote the foreword to it, and so she was very much on my mind. She's been really on my mind a lot since Heidi of My Reading Life and I buddy read her memoir, Halfbreed, and we did the updated edition where the chapter that talked about her being raped as a teenager by a cop was restored to the text, because the publisher in 1980 or whenever it was first published refused to publish that. But it's been restored, and that was the one, and I did it as an audiobook, and so I had Maria Campbell in my ear for all those glorious weeks. So my librarian was really, you know, she's had to phone the alumni office and she was looking this up and doing this and typing. And I said, can you excuse me for a minute? That's one of my very most favorite writers. I just want to go talk to her for a minute. And I ran over and I said, Maria Campbell. And she stopped and looked around and on smiling. And I said, I'm a big fan of yours. Can I just say hello to you, please? And she stopped and she never did smile. Here's a picture. But she listened to what I had to say. And I'll talk more about the not smiling in a minute, because it doesn't really matter that she didn't smile, but she was not entirely comfortable with this interaction. I was not only polite, but, you know, warm and friendly, but she never completely relaxed. And I just said, you know, that I had been involved in a literary event that she had been a volunteer reader for, to do with AIDS and literature in the early 90s. And she said, yes, she remembered that. And I said, it's just so nice to see you here. Would you mind if I got a picture of us together? And she didn't say yes, she didn't say no, she nodded, and I held up the camera, and I think this is a gorgeous picture of us. So that just, oh my God, I was just fangirling and geeking out all over the place. So Wednesday was a very, very good day. Now, I thought about it afterwards, thinking that she wasn't very relaxed. Well, I mean, any interaction between settler Canadians and Indigenous Canadians is fraught. So there's that, and I don't want to skip over that part. But the other thing that's going on in Canada right now is that the political climate, the extremism, the Trumpian bullshit, the virus is in the body politic of Canada as well. And just a few days ago, our Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, a Ukrainian Canadian who was actually much more well known in the States as a writer and what's the word? Like a talking head, political expert. I used to listen to her on American podcasts for several years before she entered Canadian politics, but she's Canadian and she has just gone up. She is the most competent member of Justin Trudeau's cabinet. I can't remember if she still is the finance minister, but she was. Now she's the deputy prime minister. I think she might be juggling both of those very, very big roles within the federal government. Well, she was born in Alberta, but she's, you know, I think her riding, she represents an Ontario constituency, or riding, we call them in Canada. She's back in Alberta, and then, you know, Alberta is like Texas, and there's some great people there that are not Trumpian assholes, but there's a lot of Trumpian assholes in Alberta. And she was verbally accosted a few days ago. In the same kind of context, like she entered a public space, she was going to the elevator up for a meeting with the mayor of some small Alberta city, and this douchebag and his wife, who was filming, or his woman, whoever she was filming on her smartphone, and he shouted, "Hey, Chrystia!" And she looked around smiling and said, "Yes." And then he said, "You fucking bitch, get the hell out of Alberta, you don't belong here." And it was really aggressive and violent verbal assault. And he walked right up to her as she was getting in the elevator with an elevator full of female assistants. And then the door closed. I mean, it was so scary. It must have been really scary for her. It was scary to watch. And that kind of thing has been happening more and more in Canada. It's never really been a part of our politics, but I blame Trump, and I don't just blame Trump, I blame the Nazi assholes within Canada, which is a growing minority. So I thought about that afterwards, that, you know, really when I called out her name, it wasn't a booming, aggressive voice. I think I called out her name in a friendly tone of voice, but I just thought afterwards, you know, this week I can imagine anybody who's a public figure of any kind in that situation would be a little bit nervous. And I hate the fact that that's happening to our politics, but it very much is. So I started my new job, and there isn't a lot of work so far. I think I've made $20 in the first 4 days. So I love it. And I'm hoping that, you know, as I get more well known amongst the clients, the customers, the students, that they will start requesting me, because I get 1 penny more per word if I'm specifically requested to mark stuff. But I don't think this is going to bring me into the black financially, at least not in the first month, but I'm really enjoying it. So that's in progress. I have a kind of a pseudo bail to tell you about. And then beyond that, I started, how many books did I start last week? I'm not very organized here, let's see. Oh, this is fabulous. Even sitting outside on the campus grounds, I can get into the public Wi-Fi at the university. So that's another reason to film here, because I can actually look stuff up on my second iPad. How fabulous. I started 4 books and I finished 2. I finished 2, started 4, 1 pseudo bail. Let's talk about the pseudo bail first. A Concise History of Wales by Geraint, Jenkins. I started this for Dafydd. When was that? March, I think? I've read exactly 24 pages. I was getting stuff out of it, but it was a very academic kind of university textbook type of writing. It wasn't something I could just pick up and sink into. It had to really kind of, well, I read 25 pages, end of story. So I may pick it up later, so I'm going to put it in my very handy dandy on hold folder on Goodreads, which is not the same as bailing because I do intend to return to it at some point, but that may be me just talking horse shit. I will. For the last week I've been thinking, this is a placeholder for so that I can start a buddy read with Heidi of my reading life, and then I've gone and filled that spot already, so stay tuned. One of the books I finished, I also started in the past week, so let's talk about the books that I've started but not yet finished. One of them is this short little book about a very important Indigenous issue in Canada, particularly in Saskatchewan. Storying Violence, Unravelling Colonial Narratives in the Stanley Trial by Gina Starblanket and Dallas Hunt. I am about a third of the way through it. Enjoy is not the word, but I'm getting stuff out of it. And maybe wish it hadn't been written in such kind of an academic style. There's a lot of jargon in it that would be off-putting for somebody who kind of had an open mind about the murder of Colton Bushy. The farmer's name was Gerald Stanley, and it should properly be referred to as the Stanley trial, not the Bushy trial. He was the victim. For a reader that kind of has an open mind and wants to learn more about the issue, this is definitely comes down on one side. It is not a neutral look at it, and I a priori agreed that this was another act of violent, racist Canadian colonialism. But I think the jargon would off-put quite a few readers. It's not completely off-putting me, but when I compare it to the writing of Chelsea Vowell, who wrote Indigenous Rights, I wish this had been written more in that kind of rhetorically powerful, everyday kind of prose. But I'm getting stuff out of it, and I'm continuing to read it. The other one that I've started and not finished, in fact, I'm only starting chapter 3 on page 22, but oh my god, the way this novel has opened has just knocked my socks off. The Welsh novel 20,000 Saints by Fflur Dafydd. And one look at her name and you would think, oh, is it translated? No, she wrote it in English. She tried to write it in Welsh because she's published, I think, poetry and other books in Welsh. Welsh is her first language, but she got her breakthrough with this novel, from what I found something online about this, by writing it in English. And I just love the writing, and I love how she sets a scene. It is set on this island, Bardsea, and I gave you a little bit of the synopsis from the back cover last week, but I haven't gotten enough into the story to meet this archaeologist who returns to Bardsea. But what's happening in the first couple chapters is that a writer-in-residence is coming to Bardsea Island, just off the coast of Wales, and there's a picture of the island. As of a few years ago, according to Wikipedia, 11 people live there in this story. It sounds like there's at least twice that many people, but this writer-in-residence is coming, and the women of the island are really excited because there's no single men on the island, and then they find out it's a woman, and then that's the first chapter. And then the second chapter, we meet this woman, and she is a young woman, very appealing character. She's got a boyfriend she doesn't really think she loves, but she doesn't want to break up with him yet. But she's going for this very isolated writer-in-residence stint on Bardsea Island, and he takes her to the ferry boat, and that's basically all that happens. But there's something really precisely character building, and the setting is so vivid, and the relationships between all the people in just a line or two is so expertly drawn that I was hooked before I got to the end of chapter 1. Can probably be reading it really slowly, but I hope it continues to go well. The other book that I started, and I'm only going to mention it very briefly, is because I'm reading the novel that was the first winner of the Booker Prize, P.H. Newby's Something to Answer For. I've found a ebook, a 120-page history of the Suez Crisis. It's called Suez Crisis 1956, End of Empire and the Reshaping of the Middle East by David Charlwood. And because it was so short, and I really needed to know at least a little bit more about the Suez Crisis to get more of a grip on what in this novel by P.H. Newby it is possible to get a grip on. Stay tuned for Kieran's and my discussion, but I thought the historical background would probably help me at least a bit. So I'm reading it. It's pretty easy to read. Probably not the best book of history ever written, but it's informative, and that's all I really wanted. I wanted something more than just the Wikipedia page, and this is giving it to me. I will have this one finished in time for my discussion with Kieran tomorrow. Oh my God, this is just the best location to make a video. Look, I'm stimulated by the people walking by. I don't seem to be bothering anybody. I've got a nice backdrop with people and foliage. I've got a really comfortable bench and it's shade. I mean, oh my God, I think you're gonna be seeing a lot of videos made in this exact spot. I'm also gonna explore. There's be 1,000 other places possibly on campus that I could film in. But anyway, so those are the 2 I've started that I haven't finished. Now let me talk about the 2 books that I have finished. I did finish Fieldwork in Ukrainian Sex by Oksana Zabuzhko, translated from the Ukrainian by Helen, and I started to lose my fascination with it by the end. I give it 4 stars because there was a lot of really fascinating and really tremendous writing here. By the end, I was kind of sick of hearing about this asshole Ukrainian artist boyfriend and didn't really care about that, and that was probably 50% of the book was about her processing that. She wove in political, historical stuff, cultural stuff about Ukraine into that, which I enjoyed, but I didn't care about the relationship at all, really, by the end, and was glad kind of to be done with it. But it was a 4-star read because I did get stuff out of it. I will read more by her, and I just thought some of the writing was profound. I think I've got a Sunday sentence selected for this Sunday. Stay tuned on all of my other social media for that. Glad I read it. Glad to be finished with it. What a treasure this was. The little-known Canadian writer, Ukrainian Canadian writer, Helen Potrebenko's most famous novel, maybe even her only novel, but I'm not sure about that. Taxi. And this was published in 1989. This is the 2nd edition published in 1989. I believe she actually changed some stuff, but it was first published in 1975, and this is the library copy. I'm the 2nd person to read it. And it's autographed. Helen Potrebenko died, I think she was in her 80s, just about a month ago. I ended up absolutely loving this. I adored it. It's a character-driven novel about a young female taxi driver in Vancouver in the late 60s, early 70s. Helen Potrebenko was a female taxi driver in Vancouver at around the same time, so it's probably quite autobiographical. I don't know how autobiographical, but I fell in love with Shannon, the cab driver. She was politically radical. She had a messed up personal life. She was a borderline alcoholic, and she seemed to get her alcoholism, her drinking under control, but she drank a lot on the job. And according to this novel, all taxi drivers of this era, at least, drank all the time that they were driving cab on the job, in the cab. She had a tough exterior, and she didn't put up with any misogynist bullshit, and she dealt with misogynist crap from almost every man, every straight man that got into her cab. But she had a heart of gold, and her character was so attractive to me that it was a bit of an unstructured novel. If you don't like character-driven fiction, you wouldn't like this, because it's just kind of anecdote to anecdote, but the through line is that you see how much this is affecting her. Now, the thing that I absolutely loved about this novel, and I loved about Shannon, the protagonist, is that almost every day, when she got up in the morning, started her shift, she commented on what a beautiful day it was. And I mean, how trite is that, right? But that every day felt like a fresh start in her life, and she was so vibrant and alive to what a beautiful day it was. And Vancouver's a beautiful city, and unless it's raining, the weather's always beautiful there. Like I say, that sounds so trite, but it absolutely wasn't trite, and it just anchored me in the multitudinousness of Shannon's character. And by the end of each day, dealing with the shitty people, because most people are shitty, and certainly most people that get into cabs are shitty, whether they're rich shitty or poor shitty. They're terrible people to deal with. And she was part social worker. She tried to be tough, and she was tough with stupid men, but with drunk people and drug addicts that were in trouble, she would always try to help them. And all of that is here in a really episodic way that, because I loved Shannon so much, I just adored this book. This, I think you might struggle to find a used copy. I don't think there's any e-copies. I checked on archive.org. They don't have this. They have other stuff by her. But if you can find this, oh, it was just a joy. Just a joy. Oh, the one thing that I didn't care for was she was very political, and there would sometimes be like 3 pages about Shannon, so probably / Helen Potrebenko's analysis of the war in Vietnam or whatever. I didn't care for those. I liked some things about her politics. I disagreed quite fundamentally with other aspects of Shannon's politics, but that's not what I'm really saying. What I'm saying is, when the diatribes that were just like an address to the reader about what was really going on in Cambodia or Laos or Vietnam or in the States, that just stuck out. But there would probably be a total of less than 10 pages of that in its entirety, but I could have done without that. Otherwise, I absolutely loved it. So that's what I finished. Tonight or tomorrow morning, I will be finishing PH Newbies, something to answer for, because I'm having my Zoom discussion with Kieran of Katie Books at noon tomorrow, my time. So I've got just a little bit left to read, and that's why I started the book about the Suez crisis. All right, so if you do all the math, and I'm not going to regurgitate it here, I will be in a position to start 4 new books. 2 as of today, and 2 more as of tomorrow when I finish the 2 books, the newbie novel and then the book about the Suez crisis, before I chat with Kieran. That'll leave space for 4. So here's what I'm planning to start. I did not have time to make a Shorty September TBR, and so I'm just going to surprise you each week with short books that I start for Shorty September, which I'm fully going to be a participant in. I just didn't get to making a TBR about it, but I'm very avidly participating. I'll put a link to the Shorty September videos and stuff. Heather and Sean, I finally got it. It's the same as my name, or it's close enough that I can get away with just saying Sean. And Bert, that's put their videos about the Shorty September, and you know, I've already finished books for it. And I'm going to start 2 more for that. This first one, because it's British women's fiction from the first half of the 20th century, which is my wheelhouse, as they say. Novel on yellow paper by Stevie Smith. I think it was written in 1936, yep. This was one of Barbara Pym's favorite novels. It's mentioned in every biography of Barbara Pym, and I've read 3 of them. And so it's high time that I read the novel. Stevie Smith, other than this novel, is known for poetry. Apparently quite a well-known British poet. But this is her novel, and I'm going to give it a try. This is for the Kenyan Readathon.
Hosted this year again by the lovely Lexa of Lexa Reads. I will put a link to her announcement video in the show notes.
And Shorty September, this is a novella called And This Is How to Stay Alive by Shingai and Njeri Kagunda. And this was personally recommended to me by Bill, one of my favorite guests on Bite-Sized Book Chats. And in fact, I think actually we did a Bite-Sized Book Chat about this. And so I bought it as soon as he recommended it. And he actually knows the author a little bit. And this is a little bit slipstreamy, magical realist stuff happening, and I hope that I will be here for that. And do you remember that Mooks and the Gripes book bucket list tag, what was it called? Something, the book bucket list or something, tag that I created last year. And then when I did it myself, I had subscribers vote on which 2 books out of my bucket list they would like to see me read in 2022. One of them was A Suitable Boy. I don't think I promised I would finish it in 2022, and I'm only about 200 pages into this 1,350 page novel, but I'm really enjoying it. Started it on New Year's Day and I'm making very slow progress. But the other one was John Steinbeck's East of Eden. So I am now ready. I now have a space that I'm going to start it as an audio text combo. I just bought the audiobook from audiobooksnow.com, which is my new favorite place to get audiobooks, because they have really good sales and they're not connected with any politically problematic corporations that I'm aware of. And then the fourth one, I am going to do a regular 1 story a week buddy read check-in type of buddy read with Heidi of My Reading Life starting next week, on a collection of short stories by Morgan Talty, an Indigenous writer who lives in Maine. It was on my most anticipated list. I expected Heidi would be interested in it because she reads a lot of Indigenous stuff and she lives in Maine. Greg of Supposedly Fun read it a week or 2 ago and absolutely loved it. So Heidi and I said, let's just start it right now. The title, you want the title? Here it is, Night of the Living Res by Morgan Talty. So that's what's going on. I want to end this on a sober note. I had so much exuberant news at the beginning. I wanted to put this at the end, change of tone, to say that with my friend's permission, I'm going to give him a heartfelt big hug of a shout out. I didn't realize that this news, that he had posted about this news on Twitter. I missed it completely, but he and I had quite a bit of private communication in the last few months. And that is Dan of the Weird Book Club. His husband Gabriel died about 3 weeks ago of liver failure. They were just apparently days away from possibly finding a donor for transplant, and he didn't make it. Just heartbreaking. Dan is a good friend of mine. He is a wonderful booktuber. I hope he will come back someday, but he and I have done some collaborations and we have become really good friends, and I've been just heartsick. Don't want to exaggerate how much support I've been able to give him because it happened at a time in my life. Most of his ordeal happened when I was in the middle of moving continents. But in the last month or so, we've had one really good chat, and I've kept in more touch, and now Gabriel's gone. So I will put a link to the Twitter thread that Dan put that I didn't know about until this morning, because I would have commented publicly a lot sooner. I thought he wanted to keep things private, but I love Dan. He's a big sweetheart, and he's going through a tough time. I would encourage you to read about him and Gabriel and look at the gorgeous pictures, and maybe send him a thought appended to that Twitter thread. That's all I got this week. Thanks for watching.